I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on GinoTV.com and Channel 99. Our guest is Craig Sperry. Craig is a proponent of two citizens' articles that are on the warrant for this coming week's town meeting, annual town meeting. They are on the subject of employee benefits. And before we get into the discussion with Craig, I'd like to just say that this discussion does not in any way reflect my views on these issues. I'm involved with another hat in labor negotiations with town employees and have to maintain my neutrality on these issues. So I want that to be clear both to the audience and to you, Craig, as we go forward. The two articles are Article 65 and Article 66. The first one deals with longevity payments. The second deals with the retirement benefits. Would you be kind enough, before we get into the specifics of each one, sort of talk about the overriding theme here?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, Dan, and thank you, Gino. I appreciate it. With Article 65 regarding longevity pay for town employees, can I refer to the chart?
Absolutely.
Basically,
no, I'd like to go. Why don't you go to the last one first and talk about, because I want to talk about both of them in terms of why they're here and what the implications are before you get into the specifics of each one. What's the theme behind these two articles? Well,
it's reforming compensation.
Why?
Why? Because they're currently at unfundable and unsustainable levels.
Do you want to come back to that, or do you want to talk about that now?
To me, I would prefer just to talk about 65 a little bit, because it's such a small piece of the pie. It doesn't, and it's non-binding. It doesn't require it's not as important as 66. To me, 66 is really that's the meat of the matter.
All right. These are two home rule petitions.
Correct.
So they are not effective until acted on by the legislature.
Correct.
And the first one, as you indicated, relates to a request that the legislature take away the right of the town to grant longevity pay in its labor contracts.
And we should say 65 is a non-binding question, so it's really for a sense of the meeting. As a non-binding question, it won't go to the legislature.
Well, that's the way it came through after the FinCom got through with it, but
correct.
It was originally presented as a home rule petition, was
correct.
it not?
Correct.
Okay.
So the way it stands now, if I can go to the chart, town employees, the majority of town employees, full-time employees, receive longevity pay as a percentage of their base salary. So for example, if you work for the town for 5 years, you get a 2% bonus every year, 10 years 3%, 15 years 4%, 20 years 5%. In presenting this, I brought up two options. One would be a merit-based plan for longevity pay. The other is a set amount. This is what DPW is paid right now. This is part of their contract, and it's a one-time bonus paid yearly. So for 10 years, you get $1,000, 15 years, $1,200, and so on.
So if you're there from 10 to 14 years, you get $1,000 each year.
Correct.
Under this plan. So and under your prior chart, you get that percentage of your salary every year.
Which is dramatically different amounts, as you can imagine. It's my thought, this plan should be in effect for all town employees. It's fair, it's reasonable, and more affordable than the other plan. Getting back to the whole idea of compensation and being sustainable and affordable for the taxpayers.
So you are going to go with the Finance Committee motion that makes this a non-binding recommendation to the town?
Yes. Yes, and if you look at the Finance Committee's comment in the warrant, they think talking about this, I'm paraphrasing what they say, but they think having this discussion is important. And I agree. I think we should be having this discussion.
All right. Just one thing that we touched on before we started on camera was the issue of the language of the article, which basically prohibits the language as it's now written, prohibits any longevity pay at all. So even your alternate proposal, the DPW plan scheme, would not be allowed if this language were actually going to Boston as a home rule petition.
And that may well be the case, but I think it's more important for the voters to have a say on what's here. And with the knowledge, this isn't going to Boston, so feel free to speak your mind and let your voice be heard.
All right, let's move on to Article 66, which
Okay.
is the article relative to retirement benefits.
Right.
What are you trying to accomplish there?
We're trying to accomplish pension reform. Right now, the town employees, full-time town employees, receive a defined benefit plan that is administered through the Barnstable County retirement system. What Article 66 seeks to do is that any newly hired town employees would join a defined contribution plan, which is similar to a 401k plan, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. There are differences between the plan, sure. The reason why this is important is on the next page, it talks about unfunded liabilities, which is a huge issue. For pensions alone, at the end of 2012, just last year, the total unfunded liabilities of pensions is $52 million. You add to that another $52 million of OPEB at the end of 2012.
Would you explain what OPEB is,
Sure.
please?
OPEB is other post-employment benefits, which essentially is retired town employees' health care. There might be some other things, but that's the lion's share of that amount. You add those two together, the total unfunded liabilities for the town at the end of 2012 is $104 million. That's a big number.
Isn't the OPEB number paid now in the annual budget? Isn't there a payment for OPEB?
If there is, it's tiny. You might have seen the selectmen discussing
well, it's not
this.
so tiny at the airport. I know that. It's around $500,000.
I think the town was throwing around a figure of $1 million. It came down to 500,000. I think they settled at around 200,000, maybe.
For the town?
For the town.
Interesting. Okay.
And I could be wrong, but that's why we have tape. We can check these things. But 200,000 out of 52 million, that's a drop in the bucket.
But that's a liability over 30, 40 years, and the town's health care is funded. Health care liability for existing employees and retired employees is essentially funded currently. It's a self-insured plan.
I would have to beg to differ. This number is growing dramatically year to year.
But
isn't
this a projection of what those costs will be over the life expectancy of the employees?
The details, I'm not up to speed on the fine details, but I just look at these numbers, and the way these numbers are growing, it's a red flag, and I don't think we're getting the complete story from town administration. I've had a lot of difficulty even getting these numbers, and I've asked for these numbers to be more prevalent. You won't find this on the town website. These numbers together showing $104 million of total unfunded liabilities. There's a reluctance to have these numbers presented. And I think we can break that logjam by going forward with 66. A positive vote on 66 would send it to the legislature and allow us some control of our future financial destiny on Nantucket and allow us to get these numbers under control.
On this article, the Finance Committee recommendation is to take no action.
That's correct.
Are you going to introduce a positive motion at town meeting to try to overcome the Finance Committee recommendation?
Yes, and I think the rest of that comment, as they did for 65, they chose to take no action. However, they think this is a good discussion for the town to have, that we should be talking about our financial situation where we might not have as much.
Do you
in the
have any
past.
idea, excuse me for interrupting,
Sure.
do you have any idea why they didn't take the same action on 66 that they took on 65, to say it was a non-binding sense to enter into the discussion rather than just saying take no action?
Well, I guess it was at my recommendation or my request, where I had requested that 65 be a non-binding question. I did not seek the same request for 66. I think 66 should go to a vote, and I think the people should have that chance to break this logjam.
The 65 has to go to a vote, or not, unless it's not called. But if it's called, it has to go to a vote. Wouldn't that have had the same impact here?
Perhaps, but to me, this is much, much, much more important. The longevity pay, it's a piece of the puzzle. This is the big picture right here.
Is there a risk that town employees and their friends and family will show up en masse to vote on these?
Well, like I said before, this does not affect existing employees. So everyone who's in the system now keeps what they have. This only affects new employees. So it's no one's holding the gun to anyone's head. It's shown that with defined contribution plans, there are additional benefits. In fact, for government employees, there are additional benefits over a 401k. And from the first dollar, for the first day that new employee starts employment with the town of Nantucket, they sign up for the defined contribution plan. Any money they put in that plan, that's their money. They get to keep that. With the Barnstable County system, they have to be vested for 10 years before they have to be an employee participating in the Barnstable plan for 10 years before they're vested. And if you leave prior to that, you get some percentage of it back. If you happen to leave the town of Nantucket's employee at any time with the 401k, you take it all with you. And we're seeing that more and more with employment. People aren't staying lifetimes in a job. They move around.
Have you done any research on what other communities are doing on these issues?
Sure. You're seeing, this is not something that is Nantucket centric only. This is happening across the country. You're having more and more cities, towns going to defined contribution plans, away from defined benefit plans. And simply, these are not sustainable. And the math, you do the math and it just doesn't work. You do the math here, from day one, it's sustainable. So you can get as kind of simple as you want, and it works that way. For example, you had the city of San Diego last summer voted 66% to do this very thing. City of San Jose, 70% voted for the 401k stuff.
What about any communities in Massachusetts that have gone that route that you are aware of?
Believe it or not, when I asked the town attorney, they said there was not a one. So Nantucket would be on the cutting edge here, which I think Nantucket's done that before. So this would be another opportunity to do that same thing.
Again, there is a little bit of a contradiction in the language of the article versus what you're proposing here, because the language of the article seems to prohibit participation in any contributory retirement system. And again, it gets into semantics, but a defined contribution plan is a contributory plan. Generally, a defined benefit plan is not. So it's a bit backwards.
Well, and
it can be, at least can be read that way.
And my, I guess my answer to that is I met with town council to have these put in the proper legal form for town meeting. And I explained exactly, this is basically it in a nutshell to town council. I'm not an attorney, so this is really what it's after. What's written, I can't argue what's written because I'm not an attorney. But this is really what it is. New employees start the 401k, and they're not given the option of being in the Barnstable County system.
All right. Do you have something you'd like to share with us to wrap this up?
I would. Why am I doing this?
Good question.
Certainly,
you want this seat?
There's nothing. I'm gaining nothing by doing this. I don't sell 401ks. I'm not in the business of that. This really is what started it. I went and used the Athenaeum's new. Digital archive retrieval system, and I found this article on longevity pay, and it talks about basically what we're talking about now, but this was 7 years ago. And if I could, Dan, let me read a quote, which I find...
Is that it? Okay. No, you got it. I'm sorry.
There's a quote from Bruce Miller, who was on the FinCom at that time in 2006. And if I could, I'll read the quote. "The payroll and benefits, 80% of our costs, are going up 10% per year. We need to have a discussion on a community-wide basis that this is what we're up against. We could be looking at a $60 or $70 million deficit over 5 years. So that was 2006. Here we are, 2013, and we're back. I mean, Bruce was an amazing prognosticator because he was right on target. In fact, we're right on that path that he was predicting. And I'm not seeing a lot of movement since 2006 to address these things. So here's a chance for the voters to break the political logjam that's existing between the Board of Selectmen, the town administration, the FinCom, and the voters can say, we're making a stand here. We think this is the time to address this situation. And it's simple and it's sustainable. And I ask for people's support for Article 66.
All right. Thank you very much, Craig.
Sure.
Craig Sperry, the proponent of Articles 65 and 66 at the 2013 Annual Town Meeting. Thank you.